on. Hello, everyone. Good evening, where my esteemed guests and I are. I'm East Coast Canada, so essentially about 2 hours north of Toronto. And my wonderful guest tonight on Six Elementals is none other than Dr. John Mauro, who is a member of various academic societies, National Academy of Engineering, National Academy of Inventors, a World Academy of Ceramics. He's Dorothy, Pate, Enright Professor, Associate Head for Graduate Education, Chair of Intercollege Graduate Degree Program in Material Science Engineering, the Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of the American Ceramic Society, and of course he had to represent because let's face it, it is a great program academically and athletically. And there's a lot of, for all the Penn State Nittany Lions fans out there, whether it's football, basketball, etc., we had to represent, put up the little Penn State logo. But of course, he's rocking the shirt anyways. Welcome to the show, Dr. John Mauro. How are you?
Thank you so much, PL. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm awesome. Better now that you're here. So it's just so amazing to have you on the show. I talked a bit about your academic qualifications, all the many things you're involved in academia in that side of your life. But of course, beyond that, where it brings you to this space is you are. I think, I know you're very modest, but I think you're widely acknowledged in my space that I occupy in the book world as one of the simply best reviewers out there. I don't think that's in argument. I think when people that I talk about the best reviewers, your name and Esme Roselane are always mentioned amongst the top two. So.
Oh, well, thank you. But I look up to you as one of the best reviewers as well.
That's very humbling. Thank you, sir. But no, I'm not in your league. But guess what? I do learn from you. I absolutely love reading your reviews. Of course, I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me in terms of supporting me and boosting my series. And check out their reviews. Not so much for my books, but check out their reviews on Grimdark Magazine that John has put up for the books in my series. They're just absolutely
your
phenomenal.
Series is just wonderful. It is one of my favorite new series of the past several years, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on your channel. I genuinely believe that it's got everything that I want in a dark epic fantasy series. The writing is beautiful, the characters, the plot twists, the overall themes that are being developed over the course of the series, and so 5 books in, 2 more to go, right?
Yeah, 2 more to go. Thank you so much for the kind words. Yeah, and my aspirations is hopefully to keep people such as yourself, people who've been willing to read it, just engaged and interested. And I'm very honored, by the kind words. So, but I do want to delve into, before we get into everything you do, because you are an assistant editor for Before We Go blog, led by the wonderful Beth Tabler. Shout out to Beth and all the Before We Go blog.
Hey, Beth.
Crew, if you're out there watching, but as well, you're the content manager for the very illustrious Grimdark Magazine.
Yes, yeah. I just had, I guess, my 3-year anniversary with Grimdark Magazine just this month.
Congratulations. So we're definitely going to try and delve into that. I just want to quickly put up another great reviewer, the awesome Shane Boy. Stop by. Hey, Shane. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you, Shane.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Yeah, the excellent reviews. Shane as well writes excellent reviews. Check out his on various books in this sci-fi fantasy milieu. He does great graphics and stuff, especially with that accompanies reviews. So thanks, Shane, for stopping by and supporting.
Thank you, Shane.
But I do want to delve into, though, quickly, if you'll just indulge me. You have some very impressive academic credentials, and your area of expertise seems to be ceramics, plastics, glass. What, if I can ask, and it sounds fascinating, what led you towards that discipline?
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess it starts all the way back when I was a young boy. My parents took me to the Corning Museum of Glass, which was about 50 miles from our house where I grew up in upstate New York. And if you're ever in the upstate New York area, Finger Lakes area, be sure to go to the Corning Museum of Glass. It's just amazing. All the different art glass. It's absolutely beautiful. The archaeological glass. They have great displays on glass engineering as well. And I fell in love with that at a young age. I wanted to see every single piece of glass in the museum, and there were a lot of pieces of glass. So I kind of had that in the back of my head starting when I was a young boy. And then I saw this video from my hometown university, Alfred University, by a professor there, Alexis Clare, and she made this wonderful, it's like a Bill Nye the Science Guy type of video, lot of fun. She was going through different costume changes and stuff. And I didn't realize until then that, studying glass and more broadly ceramics is, a valid career choice. So I decided to, pursue that for my career. Went to school there at Alfred University, got an awesome education. Then I went to Corning to work there for 18 years, and then moved here to Penn State in 2017.
Wow, well, that's quite the odyssey. So, when you realized that, because you said you were for Corning, so you're in the corporate world and doing that, then what led you to want to teach, to want to actually be a professor and teach ceramics?
Oh, wow. So I think part of it may be genetics. I've got a lot of teachers in my family. My mom was a kindergarten teacher for over 30 years, and I would always help her out with, setting up her classroom and stuff. So, and yeah, I have an aunt was a teacher, cousins who are teachers. So I've been drawn to that, and I had in mind, even when I was in university, that that's something I wanted to do at some point. And it was just a matter of, finding the right time and the right place. And all the stars seemed to be aligned with this opportunity at Penn State. One of the professors here who was, teaching glass science, we found out that he was retiring, and we had hired every single one of his students for like the past decade at Corning. And,
Wow.
and I still remember I was in a meeting there with my boss and also with our director of university engagement, and we found out that he was going to retire, and people were freaking out. And anyway, my former boss said that I took the problem a little bit too seriously when I quit my job and decided to come here and take on the role as a glass professor.
Wow, that's amazing. So forgive my ignorance. I'm just extrapolating from seeing, especially your credentials. So is Penn State renowned for their ceramics program, or is this?
It actually is, yeah. So Penn State is one of the world's top universities in ceramics and in glass also. Material science and engineering, it kind of flies under the radar compared to a lot of other fields of study like chemical engineering or mechanical engineering. So it is a smaller field, but within that smaller field, there's a great diversity because people can study metals or polymers, ceramics, glasses, composites. And there's so many different ways to study it, whether it is making the materials or characterizing it or doing theory or modeling and simulation. And so there's so many different ways to mix and match. And here at Penn State, we've got one of the top programs overall in material science and engineering. And within that, we've got experts in each of these areas. So it's really an ideal place to be for materials. And specifically in ceramics and glass, it's outstanding.
Wow, that's incredible. I just want to quickly put up another compliment for you, sir, and regarding reviews and that you do an amazing job from Sparkle. Hey, Sparkle,
okay. Thank you.
Thanks for coming by and supporting John. And yes, he is just a fantastic reviewer. So now on that thread, obviously in the academic world, you're a tenured professor. You're also, like many profs, you write. You're a published author in the scholastic, milieu and nonfiction about ceramics and glass. Can you tell us a bit about what was the process like to become an author, in the academic world?
Well, I think it starts off with kind of smaller size publications. So at most of academic publishing is publishing in the peer-reviewed journal literature, like my journal, Journal of the American Ceramic Society. We put out 12 issues a year. We publish close to 1,000 papers per year. And so people who are doing research in ceramics and glass, this is one of their primary journals where they want to get published. So graduate students, especially if they're getting their PhD, they need to do research that leads to these peer-reviewed publications. And typically for a PhD, the rule of thumb is like 3 papers for a PhD. So they get, one chunk of work where they've got one key new discovery, they write it up in a paper. The paper, it could be, 10, 12, 20 published pages. There's not really a set length, but then that gets submitted to the journal. The editors take a look. They decide if they want to send this out to review, and there's a whole anonymous peer review system where it gets sent out to at least 2 reviewers who go through it, and they make their recommendation about whether or not it should be published. Usually they'll want to have some revisions, and then there's back and forth. And, if everything looks good in the end, then that gets published, and that's something that students can put on their resume. And so usually that's where you start is journal publications. And then after you establish yourself in the field after a number of years and, have built up enough expertise, at that point, it becomes possible to publish a book or a textbook. Yeah. For me, it really came... well, it's kind of funny. I tried to write a book while I was working in industry at Corning, but the lawyers weren't too happy with that idea of sharing my knowledge at that point. So for me, I waited till moving back to an academic environment, published this glass book, which is here. This is with my advisor, Arun Varshnaya. So we published this together. And my other book, my kinetics book, it's not with me right at the moment. I think my daughter's got it with her. But yeah, I'm working on the 2nd edition of that book, and that should be published either at the end of the year or beginning of next year. I've got some new cover art that we haven't released yet that was actually made by Luke Tarzian.
Oh my gosh, yeah, fantastic, brilliant author.
Yes, he is a brilliant author and a brilliant artist as well.
Wow, I didn't even know I didn't know about the artistic side for him. Just goes to show
he does the art for his own books. I was always struck by how much I liked his cover art, and it did take me a while to realize that he's the one who's designing the artwork for his own books.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. Okay, well, and I've only read one work by Luke, but I really have to read more. Definitely on my TBR. But yeah, he's absolutely brilliant. Phenomenal prose and very dark and very, very, very atmospheric. But yeah, wonderful author. But how does it feel to be a published author, to know that your work is source material for academic courses, and how does it feel?
Well, it definitely makes teaching a lot easier when I can just follow my textbook. But it feels really nice to see, especially when it gets adopted by other universities, because I've been getting notes from professors from other universities in the US and around the world, how they are adopting either one or both of my textbooks for their courses. And I always send them a copy of all of my slides too, to help with teaching in the classroom. And I've recorded YouTube lectures too for going through both of the textbooks. So I when did I start this? A couple years ago, I started a YouTube channel and decided to just record my lectures and put them up there for free. So anyone who wants to follow along and learn about glass or learn about kinetics can watch the lectures online, and they're there for students too. I found that students really appreciate having the videos up there too, where they can go back after class, and if they want to review something and go into more depth, that it's available for them anytime.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. But I guess my curiosity is, you're really, deeply, involved in the academic world and with ceramics, etc. So where does fantasy and sci-fi and horror, how does that part of your life fit in, and how did that start?
So I think I've always loved to read, and I remember going to our local public library when I was a kid and just breathing in the books basically. But the first time I really fell in love with fantasy was in, I would say, 6th grade, when my teacher, who happens to be also a cousin-in-law, small town, lots of relatives, So he assigned The Hobbit to us, and we read The Hobbit and analyzed it. And I was like, "Wow, this is amazing! I need to have more of this." And he was like, "There is more. The Lord of the Rings." And I had this, mass market paperback editions of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings with almost comically bad covers, and the spines were all worn out. And anyway, I absolutely loved that. And when I was an undergrad at Alfred University, one of the professors from outside my field who had the biggest impact on me was Professor Fiona Tolhurst, and she was a renowned medievalist. She was an expert in Arthurian literature, and she's published books on feminist interpretations of Arthurian literature.
Wow.
And I had her when she was just a new professor, so still very young, and she was so engaging with the students in the class, and she really helped me take my writing to the next level. It was a small class, and she asked us to turn in draft essays, and she would completely mark them up and made me realize things about writing that I'd never even considered before. But she, of course, was really into fantasy, especially Arthurian fantasies, and so we read a lot of fantasy in there, and my love of fantasy was rekindled. Then when I got to graduate school, I didn't really have that much time for reading for pleasure. And then when I eventually came back to it again, it enriched my life in ways that it's both good on its own, but it also is helpful for my main career as well. Like when I finished my kinetics book, I felt completely drained, honestly, and I felt like I couldn't write anymore at all. Like even writing a page would be difficult. And actually getting involved with the sci-fi and fantasy community and writing reviews, it helped to stimulate my writing again, and kind of rekindle my love of writing from a different perspective that then I can bring back to my scientific and technical writing. So now it's just so much easier for me just to sit down and just write.
No, and you know what, I can tell, the caliber of your views. It's quite clear that you are an author, because of the caliber of your writing and reviews. And but I wonder, so you took it from being a reader and a lover of story, a lover of fantasy and sci-fi, to writing reviews about the books that you read, and then you parlayed that into actually doing it on a more formal level with Before We Go blog and Grimdark Magazine. So how did that evolve?
It was like a whole bunch of things that happened at once that made me decide that I should just go for it. This actually goes back to the beginning of the pandemic, and of course we were all, locked inside, and my daughter loves to read, just as much, probably even more than I do. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I introduced her to Goodreads just as a way to keep track of her books. I had been using Goodreads for close to a decade at that point, just as a means to keep track of what books I have, what I've read, what I haven't read, and then I would give star ratings. But I never wrote any reviews. And anyway, I introduced her to the app, and next thing I know, she started writing reviews. And she became like the number 3 most popular reviewer in the United States.
Wow. Wow.
I couldn't believe it. Anyway, so it became kind of a father-daughter bonding experience too. The other thing is I felt so passionate about a series of books that I'd read. I read Mark Lawrence's Book of the Ancestor, Red Sister, Gray Sister, Holy Sister.
Yes.
When I got to the end of Holy Sister, I felt like every emotion superimposed on itself. It was just, and it's just, I have to share this. And the review I wrote was really bad. It was just like 3 sentences. I went back and improved it later, but I had this feeling like I must share this love of this book with the world, and so that's the first one I wrote. Other thing that happened, unfortunately, the professor that I told you about, Fiona Tolhurst, she passed away in the pandemic, and she was still quite young, and that really shook me. And I wanted to as kind of a tribute to her, and the impact she had on me in fostering my love of reading, to try to have that same impact on other people. So I'm trying to channel her as much as I can in what I'm doing, to hopefully spread that love of reading, especially the love of fantasy with the readers of my reviews. But that really shook me, and so that I always have her in the back of my mind too when I'm doing this work.
Well, I'm very sorry for your loss. She sounds like she was absolutely wonderful.
She was absolutely wonderful.
And quite an inspiration. So, but I mean, we're very blessed and very fortunate that we have you as a reviewer in the space. You're an inspiration to me, of course, as a reviewer. But specifically with those two entities, with Grimdark Magazine and Before Go Blog, how did you become part of those? And how did that all come together?
Yeah. So I was just doing Google searches trying to find recommendations for new books, and I came across the Grimdark Magazine website, and they had some listicles on there about book recommendations, and I was like, oh, these are books that I feel like I would really like. And so I got some of the books, and I did really like them. And so I started following them. I subscribed to the magazine through their Patreon. And then Adrian Collins, the founder and editor-in-chief, he put out a call for new reviewers. And this is at the same time I had submitted my application for editor-in-chief of Journal of the American Ceramic Society. I was waiting on that one. And I kind of looked at Adrian's call for Grimdark Magazine. I decided, nobody knows who I am. I have no experience in the field. I have no qualifications for this, but I love it. So let me just try. Let me just take this out as the worst that can happen is he'll say no, and that's the same thing as if I never tried in the first place, right? And so I submitted an application to him. I sent him some of my reviews that I had written for some of the books more recently. I'd gotten better at that point at Goodreads reviews, and he really liked it, and he invited me to join. And of course, I had no idea what to expect, like Grimdark Magazine, what are they like there? It turns out they're super nice, super friendly, just like the sweetest people you can imagine. Hit it off right away, and now it's been 3 years. That's where I met Beth as well. As you know, she's very active in Grimdark Magazine. She's now the editor of the magazine, and she invited me to join the Before We Go blog team, like maybe a year after that or so, because originally it's because some of the things that I read are not within the scope of Grimdark Magazine, and Before We Go blog has a broader scope. So I decided to take her up on that, and we've been partnering on both of these, both on the Grimdark Magazine side and the Before We Go blog side, and she's amazing.
Yeah, she's absolutely incredible, and wow, and I mean, you've gone in those. And you're very modest again to say you weren't qualified to become a reviewer. I think you're eminently qualified, but and now you've moved into more of the editorial side. You become an assistant editor with Before Go blog, and you're the content mentor for Grimdark Magazine. So how did that escalate from you simply writing reviews to you becoming involved with how both those sites put
well,
things in?
I guess Adrian and Beth were both happy with my output, and they had a need there, so they invited me to join at those levels, and I eagerly said yes because I did want to contribute more. I felt like I had more to give, and I really believe in what they're doing on both of these sites, and it's been going great, and it's a great way to interact with the whole team too on both sites.
Yeah, and you've been doing phenomenal work from what I can see in both those aspects. So it's been amazing. I quickly want to put up another comment. Thanks for joining. Is AK and AK, hello. Thanks for joining and supporting John and checking out the channel. I appreciate it. So from your lens of being both an assistant editor with Before We Go blog, a content editor with Grimdark Magazine, a reader, a reviewer, what is it in terms of the way literature in the fantasy, sci-fi, horror, etc. sphere is going, the way the trends in publishing are going? how do you feel about the way the industry is sitting, specifically in terms of simply the sheer volume of books that are coming out every day, especially with indie, the way traditional publishing, they really seem to be tailoring and being very careful about what kind of books they publish. How do you see the industry now, kind of being a bit of an insider now of where things are evolving, specifically when it comes to fantasy and sci-fi and horror?
Yeah. What I think is interesting too is that the evolution that we see on the literary side, especially in science fiction and fantasy, it's a little bit ahead of where we see the evolution in the scientific and technical publishing. I mean, the first thing that you noted is the trend towards indie, right? So this is a democratization of the publishing process where you no longer have to go through a publisher as a gatekeeper to get your book published. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. And there's pros and cons either way. But if you've got a vision for a book, or of course in your case a series of books that you want to publish, and you could try for a large publisher, you could try for a small publisher, you can try the indie route. And nothing's holding you back at that point except for your own imagination, right? So this is so exciting because this is the way to get out completely new ideas, because they don't have to fall within what a publisher might think is going to be something that is commercially successful. And you could have books that sort of come out of left field, right? And if you look at Mark Lawrence's self-published fantasy blog off and all the success stories from that, every year 300 entries, and then there's 10 finalists and one winner, and all the finalists are great books, and many of the semifinalists as well, and many of the books that aren't even chosen as semifinalists are still great books. And there's just such a wonderful diversity, and it's all coming from a place of passion from those individual authors. So it is, a joy to see that. The other thing is the other mega trend that we're seeing is, AI, and basically how to deal with that. And that came first with respect to cover art and generative AI from, an art point of view, and then shortly thereafter from a writing point of view. And, one of the main things that we're having to deal with on both sides is, generative AI that is just garbage. That is, people are running a computer program and, telling me, write this for me. They're putting their name on it. They're claiming to be an author, right? And then they're publishing it. And, Amazon is being flooded with these AI generated books, just in the hopes that people are accidentally going to bring this stuff up on their Kindle, flip through some pages, and they, collect a few cents. And if they get enough, that, adds up eventually to some real money. On the scientific technical side too, it's we need to be really careful about that, because there are journals that get targeted for AI generated submissions. There are data that are made up. There are figures in the papers that are AI generated. There are companies that are taking our content and using it to train AIs without our permission to do so, just like that's happening in the literary community as well. So we're dealing with all these same issues. Another big thing that we're dealing with more on the scientific side is the open access movement. This is the idea that, if research is publicly funded, that it should be freely available to the public. And so one of the major trends that we're seeing is a move from subscription services where you'd have to pay a fee to access journals to where the author actually has to pay an open access fee in order to make it freely available. So that's one of the big things we're also seeing.
Yeah, no, and you really you so eloquently highlighted some of the trends and major issues, I think, concerns that are confounding us, in terms of especially AI. Do you, and I'd love to get your opinion, John, as a brilliant person and an academic mind. Do you see any solutions for some of these issues, things that we could do to forestall some of these concerns and I mean, the situation is evolving so quickly, right? And I don't know necessarily laws and legislation is keeping up with with the evolving nature of the situation. Do you have any comments or suggestions about it?
Yeah, it's a big problem. Like you said, it's evolving rapidly because the technology is evolving, and as the technology evolves, the other technology that's used to detect AI is always going to be behind, right? And so that's a problem. Like one of the things we have in our journal is plagiarism detection software. And normally detecting plagiarism is easy. You just look for people copying and pasting paragraphs, right? And now it's a lot more sophisticated because it's this sophisticated kind of interpolation algorithm that's an amalgamation of all of the published literature, and then it's generating this AI stuff. So yeah, technology and keeping up with that is an issue. Legislation, I think one of the biggest things is how to enforce copyright laws, because right now they're just being ignored. And of course, it's these huge corporations with billions of dollars of funding that think they can do whatever they want, and you know what? They're getting away with it, right? So somebody needs to stand up to enforce copyright laws as well. It's a big issue in the classroom too, because there's kind of two things going on simultaneously. There's at universities, people are considered, okay, there's this amazing technology. How can we use it to enhance the education process? But what's actually happening most of the time is it's being used for people to cheat. And so it's difficult to check that too. So professors are moving back to more like in-class work, in-class exams, in-class essay writing, because then you can sit there and watch the students and see them actually doing the work. And it's for me, it's always disappointing too. Like if somebody turns in something to me that is obviously been generated by AI, and then I call them out on it, and I made it clear that this is not an allowable thing to do. So we're all trying to figure this out. There aren't any easy answers at this point.
Yeah, it's a big conundrum, and I want to maintain that topic a bit if you don't mind. But I quickly want to put up the awesome Britain from Cape Britain. What's up, buddy? Thanks for coming by. Awesome booktuber. Check out his channel, and wonderful friend and community supporter. So thanks for stopping by to support John Britain and say hi. Really appreciate it. And John, those are really salient points. I think as well there is so much involved in that of an ethical issue, and what is ethical versus what is unethical. A lot of people would argue that using ChatGPT to write a paper is just like using a calculator to help do your taxes, right? And there's many ethical quandaries and debates going on about what it actually means to use AI and how it's used, whether or not this is unethical, whether or not this versus this is unethical. And I think that's something that a lot of people are really struggling with as well.
Yeah, and there are so many different layers to this, because there's the ethics question about how these like large language models are trained in the first place, which is using content which the authors of that content may or may not have given permission for it to be used, and in most cases they did not give permission, right? So there's that ethics question. There's the ethics question of like the environmental impact of AI, and it's actually an extremely inefficient use of computational resources, and it takes enormous amounts of computing power. There's the deleterious environmental impact of that. Then there's the ethical implications of, okay, if somebody's just putting in a prompt and a computer program is spitting out this essay or whatever, and then they put their name on it, then they're claiming that they are responsible for this work that they didn't do. So there's that as well. And then there's the implications that it has in the larger context on, say, the educational process, and the impact that it has on our brains too. There was just a study out from MIT about a week or two ago that was looking at cranial activity of people who are using ChatGPT to quote write essays or cause essays to be written versus writing it themselves, and it's night and day difference. And in the end, if people are relying on ChatGPT, they're not actually learning. And the other thing, I don't know if you saw Philip Chase's great video that he had with AP Canada. Yeah, just a few days ago. Brilliant discussion there. It's the sense of fulfillment that is lost too, because if you do something, if you write something, and you put in the blood, sweat, and tears, and you put your passion into that, when it's done, you feel this wonderful sense of pride and accomplishment. And that's just completely absent, of course, if you didn't put in the work to do it. And it's not always a walk in the park, right? I mean, when you're writing something, there are many times where it's frustrating. There are many times where, oh, I wish this could go faster. I wish I could be done. But in the end, when you put in the work, that's what makes it worthwhile, and that's part of what it is to be human too. And then there's the part about the creativity. If we're using AI to replace like mundane tasks, that's one thing. But if we're using it to replace something that is a creative process with something that is inherently non-creative, because AI is incapable of creativity, it's just spitting out some boring average of what is out there in the published literature, then that's really tragic, because that's taking away part of what it means to be human.
I really have to agree, and those are very selling comments, and I know there's no easy answers or solutions to all of these very perplexing issues, but hopefully as time goes on, we'll come to have some of those answers. Because for me, I think, the creativity and specifically the originality being under assault, the whole concept of originality. I mean, as authors, we're always struggling with, the fact that, okay, well, everything in literature is derivative of everything else, essentially, but there is a certain amount of, I feel, originality that's native to when an author decides to, put pen to paper or key to keyboard, fingers to keyboard, and create something. But if that's gone, because all you're doing is taking bits and pieces from other people's actual work and spitting that out into like putting it up in a formula, that's not originality, right? So
exactly. I mean, that's true of writing, that's true of art, that is true of science, it's true of music. And each one of these fields, it has the potential of being compromised by generative AI.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, again, we have some solutions on the horizon.
I hope so.
It'll be the smart people, the really smart people like you, that'll be figuring that out, not me. So hopefully, I can turn to you and people like you for those type of solutions. So I do want to get into as someone who's so eminently well respected in the reviewing space that occupies one of the top reviewers out there. John, we can't let you get out of here without getting some recommendations for you about books and series that you've read recently that really or historically that you've read in the past that really you feel are important works to read. Or simply just great books.
Sure.
Genres that you read.
I guess I'll start with the one I just finished a few minutes ago. So Philip Chase sent me his, While Darkness Gathers. I was so excited when he first announced the Adan trilogy, and he'd been working on it for like 18 years. And I got one of the first copies of The Way of Adan, and I just loved it. I mean, obviously, from the covers of all these stained glass, just so good, right? And his writing, and the way that he embraced the kind of traditions in fantasy while also building an entirely new story, and the philosophical depth that he brought, it's so good. And all 3 volumes of the trilogy, in my opinion, they just get better and better. So the Adan trilogy is amazing. This takes place 16 years afterwards. It's a little bit thinner than the other books. It's kind of a more self-contained. It's not as epic as in the main trilogy, but it's still a beautiful story. The characters are great. We've got some new characters, some characters from the original trilogy. So this is definitely worth checking out. I'd recommend doing this after reading the main trilogy. But that was great. I guess I don't have any other fantasy on my desk here, but Mark Lawrence's Library trilogy finished up this year too, and just the amount of creativity that's in there. All three books of the trilogy, it starts with the book that wouldn't burn. The ending is just mind-blowing and totally unexpected, and he does it 3 times in the 3 different books, where in every case it's like this mind-blowing ending that is totally different from anything I've read before and totally different from the other books of the series, and I just don't know how he kept doing that. And that was just such a nice balance between fantasy and science fiction as well. On the horror side, so Luke Skull has a new book that is coming out, and that was great. I love how he took all of his skills from the fantasy side, writing grimdark fantasy, and applied it toward horror. Gemma Moore has actually multiple new books coming out in the fall. I just read her new one, Itch, which comes out in October, and definitely not for the squeamish, but wow, her book is so good. She's one it's like she can do no wrong. It's like every book is just so well written, and she takes it in so many different directions. So those are a few recommendations. I'm also really excited about Anna Smith Sparks' new book. I think she's got 2 new books coming out this year.
Again, those are all fantastic recs, fantastic authors. Philip Chase's Madame Trilogy is currently my favorite in the fantasy series of all time.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. It reminds me a lot in spirit with your series, with A Drowned Kingdom Saga. It's just in terms of the epicness, the really well realized characters, the depth, both the emotional depth and the philosophical depth, and the beautiful writing. Just such well polished writing, and it's obvious in both cases that many years of thought and care and love went into both of those. So, your series and his series are 2 of the ones that float to the top for me in terms of, greatest new series.
I'm very humbled, and of course, if you compare it to Philip, that's high praise. Philip, of course, like he was one of my absolute favorite people in this space, and he's such a wonderful human being. It's unfair that someone is, just so wonderful and also so talented and so intelligent. At the same time, and his series is fun. And this Mark is an author that I know is going to become one of my favorite authors. I simply just haven't read enough by her yet. Yeah. I've read her main series, and wow, dark, but beautiful. Eclectic. It was dripping with nuance and. I absolutely loved her work.
It's just so poetic, and she's really, carved out her own style too. And I especially love some of her newer books that she's published over the past couple of years. Her main series is awesome, but her newer work, I feel like she takes it even deeper in terms of the literary style that she has developed and the way that she flexes that style in some of her new work.
Yeah. Oh no, totally agree. And I have to get to the rest of her backlist. John, what attracts you to a book in the science fiction, fantasy, horror movie? What is it? Is it more recommendations from other authors? Is it simply word of mouth, booktube? What makes you go, I'm going to put that book on my TBR, I'm going to read it, other than someone sending you an ARC and asking you to read it?
It's a combination of those. I think over time you find reviewers or booktubers who they're like a good match for you. Like if for example, Philip Chase. So I seem to be very much in line with his book recommendations, and I saw this with the Spiffbox contest, where all of my, if we were to plot like my ratings for all the 10 finalists versus Philip Chase's, they were basically on a line with each other. We're just very much in sync with our tastes. So reviewers like that, yourself too, I always eat up your reviews, and I love all the detail that you provide, And of course, in Grimdark Magazine, I read a lot of the recommendations from the fellow reviewers there. And so I think over time, you kind of find those reviewers who you sort of jive with the most, and if they're recommending it, and you have appreciate the same types of literature that they do, that there's a pretty good chance that you'll like it too. For me, I love quality of writing is very important. Inventiveness of the story. I don't want to just read the same tropes just in a different package. I love stories that have that are character driven, that really go for the emotional depth, and it's not just about like here's a bunch of action in the plot, but I really want to connect with the characters and connect with the prose.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I cannot tell you how you ruined my TBR, because every time I see a review pop up from you, I'm not normally I'm looking to put that book on my TBR, because especially if you liked it. So that's how I get a lot of my recs. People like Philip Chase, Esme, Rosaline. When I see
Esme,
yeah, she is just again an exceptional person, and again one of the best reviewers I think out there.
Absolutely.
In this space. So I put up a couple of quick comments here, because went back to the AI discussion. Britain was saying, "Yep, I should be fascinated with what AI could bring. I'm just hoping to God that humanity makes the right decision." Yes,
me too.
Indeed, we do hope so, Britain. And from ZK and AK, God, you write some Gemma Armour. Armour was one of the first indie authors I found. Oh, fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If anyone wants to check her out, Full Immersion is the book that I recommend starting with. That book is, I still kind of shake a little bit when I think about that book, in terms of both the inventiveness of what she's doing, but more importantly the emotional depth that she brings. Full Immersion is a great place to start for others who haven't yet found her.
Fantastic. So listen to those recs, folks. That's where I'll be beginning, because I haven't read any Gemma Armour yet. So I will definitely have to start there. John, reviewing. I think I think there are for a lot of us who write reviews and write reviews for blog sites, etc. We all feel that we try to bring a certain amount of professionalism to the craft. I believe. We certainly try to perform in an ethical manner when it comes to writing reviews. It sometimes is a difficult space to navigate, in that, obviously authors sometimes get frustrated that, if they have a review that they don't feel is favorable. I think most people would agree that, we as reviewers feel that reviewers are it's us commenting on a book. It's not necessarily for the author. Right. It's for us, and to let fellow readers know what our thoughts, convey our thoughts about a particular book. It's also, a lot of reviewers have gotten away from even providing ratings, like the star, typical 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 star rating, and because again, that also it can potentially add to controversy, because a lot of authors, and understandably so, they care very much about the ratings for their book, and keeping those nominally high, so that can hopefully drive more sales and more people interested in their works. And so reviewing can be a very difficult thing, and you always approach it with such class and dignity, and how you conduct yourself, aside from the reviews themselves being phenomenal. Do you think it's tough sometimes to be a reviewer in this space when it comes to?
It's tough, because the reviews are for the reader, so the readers potentially outnumber the author by a very wide margin, and they're written for the readers. If the authors are able to get something constructive out of them, then that's great. And if it's a positive, glowing review, that's easy, right? So there's no hesitation about that. That the authors are going to love it, and that they're able to take a pull quote from that, use it in their book. But the important thing is, of course, to be honest about your own opinion, but also recognize that it is an opinion. Just because if somebody doesn't like something, then other people could like it. One thing that we always try to do in Grimdark Magazine and before we go blog is, if the review overall is a negative review, at least try to find a few nice things to say about it. Like even though it didn't work overall, these still things would work. And then at the end, say, something like, although this didn't work for me, if you're interested in this type of thing, because there are a lot of readers who will read a negative review and decide, oh, that the things that this reviewer didn't like, they actually do like, and then they want to pick it up. So, ultimately it's about helping the books find the right audience. And even if I'm not the right audience, maybe I can help, other people who are the right audience to find it. And for authors, I know it's difficult. Some authors are totally fine with reading reviews and are very respectful of the process, whether it's positive or less positive reviews. And other times it's unfortunate if they take personal offense at something and then start going after reviewers. And at that point, they just need to stop. They should just step away, because if they're going to put something out there for the public to read, they have to be able to take that criticism, because the goal is for them to sell books. The goal is for them to get a large enough audience where hopefully they can generate some appreciable income on that. And having a large enough audience means not everyone's going to like it. There's always going to be some fraction who don't like it, no matter how good the book is, right? And so that's expected, that you will get negative reviews, and that actually is a sign of success, because people have read the book that you're finding people who really weren't a part of the target audience for whatever reason. So, if authors can't take it, they're better off just not going into those spaces, not going into the reviewer spaces, and even reading the reviews, and just focusing on the writing. So I think it's really case by case basis for them.
No, I totally agree. And part of being in your published author yourself, part of that is accepting constructive criticism and realizing that negative reviews also, I would be suspicious of reading a book with hundreds or thousands of reviews where there were basically no negative reviews. I would wonder if something was, if the book wasn't being authentically reviewed, right? So but I think you said some really important things in that. Yeah, even if a book's not for you, try to accentuate the positives, and you do that so well in your reviews. I love the way you do that, and I think I've found books that weren't for me, but I know they're extremely popular books or they're beloved books, and but yeah, I think, and of course, I try to be kind in my feedback, and especially being an author myself, I know what it's like to get a negative review. But I do, again, thank you for the way you review books with compassion, with honesty and integrity, but yet with compassion.
That means a lot. And actually, it's really meaningful when an author does get back to me too. If it's well, let me take an example. My friend John Palladino. So I didn't know him before coming into the book community, and I discovered that he was living pretty close to my hometown. So we actually met in person. But I got a copy of his first book, The Trials of Ashmount, and lots of good things about the book. I gave it. I emphasized the good things, but also I had some constructive criticism for areas where I thought he could improve. And always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh no, what if somebody responds negatively? But he took it exactly the way that it was supposed to be taken, which is in a constructive fashion. He was very thankful. And he took all of that advice, and I'm assuming advice that he got from other people. And his second book, he absolutely knocked it out of the park. It was brilliant, just so good. One of the best books I had read that year, and I'm so proud of him. I mean, how much he had grown, and I really appreciate the constructive way in that he was working.
That's fantastic.
Reviewers, yeah.
And that's one of the many benefits, I think, of having people like you in this space, John, that can help us all be better writers with the feedback that you get. I've certainly taken a lot from your reviews of my books. And of course, I am incredibly honored to have your comments on my most recent book, A Pack of Wolves, on the front cover. It's one of the heights of my writing career. It's just, I'm still giddy thinking about it, that you would do that. Thank you so much. That just means so much.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's just a real honor. But listen, I want to respect your time. I know you're busy. It's the summertime, and I know, yes, being off from work doesn't mean that you're not busy with other things. I just want to thank you so much for joining me. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you'll come back, on the show at some
Absolutely.
point. There was so much more we could have talked about, but again, I want to be respectful of your time. But as we're winding down, do you mind telling us where we can find you in the book space, and also for ceramics, for your YouTube channel, which I wasn't even aware that you had one. So on the academic
Yes.
side, but obviously things as well, like Grimdark Magazine and Blog and your social media handles, etc.
Sure. So I guess the easiest thing is just to Google my name, John Mauro, and stuff should come up. My Penn State stuff will come up. My editor stuff will come up. But you can, if you actually search for my name in YouTube, my channel will come up. It's basically all science stuff except for one video I have on Anna Smith Spark. But if you're interested in glass, that's a place you can check me out. I'm also on Blue Sky, so feel free to connect with me there. And my journal is Journal of the American Ceramic Society, in case you're interested on the science and technology of ceramics.
And quickly, I did want to ask you quickly, if you'll just indulge me. Can you name a fantasy book? I know you mentioned Philip Chase's covers, of course, the stained glass windows, and can you name a book that you've ever read that has any incorporation of the exploration of ceramics and/or glass in that book?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, let's see. I know there was one from Brian McClellan. I haven't actually read it, but he has like a glass-based magic system. I think it's kind of a Sanderson-inspired type of magic system, but instead of allomancy, it's sort of glass-based. I haven't read it yet, but it's been on my list of things to read.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out as well. I've heard the name of the front. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that as well. So that sounds fantastic. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming by. It's been such an honor and a pleasure. Quickly, PL Stewart, all my socials are basically at PL Stewart Writes, whether it's Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter/X, or Facebook. The books are plstewart.com. 5 books out now in the series. The 5th one, A Pack of Wolves. Again, I was honored to have the wonderful Dr. John C. Mauro, write the front cover endorsement quote on the book. So, and I'm just happy you liked it enough to do that. And book 6, A Black Dragon on Red, coming out in the spring of 2026. Of course, you can also find me beside my wonderful partner Taylor from Maybe Between the Pages on Page 2. We just had an episode earlier, actually, today with our wonderful brothers Gwyn. We'll check out that.
We've had a busy day.
Yeah, and of course, 6 Elemental Interviews, where I have the extreme honor of interviewing wonderful creatives in the space, such as John. So,
all right. Well, thank you, PL, and thanks everyone for watching and joining in.
Thanks so much for everybody watching the chat, who watching the replay. You make this type of long form content awesome.